Thanks, Susan. I'm Joe Collins from the Australia West Papua Association, the Sydney branch. I'm the secretary. And a great card, Susan. I just read on the first line. I was just reading Papua and West Papua, and in brackets, not Papua New Guinea. And we hold information stalls, and people come up and ask us what it's all about. We say West Papua, and they have a bit of a puzzle look. They're not quite sure. They think it's something to do with PNG, but and I'll just say that we refer to the whole of the western half of the island of New Guinea as West Papua, as do the indigenous West Papuans. It's a former Dutch colony of West New Guinea. At the moment, it's actually divided into two, Papua and West Papua, so it can get a bit confusing. But when we say West Papua, we mean the whole of the western half of the island of New Guinea, former Dutch colony. Now, West Papua is a colony of Jakarta. We can forget about the so-called Act of Free Choice that occurred in 1969. It was a farce. Even the UN officials involved in the referendum said it was a whitewash. We just wanted to get rid of this problem as quickly as possible. Indonesia chose just 1,025 people, one for every 700 West Papuans, to vote in this so-called Act of Free Choice, and under the point of a gun, they signed on to integrate with Indonesia. And if you think about it, it's now 53 years since Indonesia took over administration of West Papua in 1963. People are still marching in the streets, they're risking arrest, torture, and if you look at the banners there carrying this, it's we want a referendum, we are not Indonesian. You'd have to say a total failure on behalf of Jakarta to win over the West Papuan people. But I'll just give a bit of an overview of what's happened since Jokowi came into power. Jokowi was elected in October 2014, so he's been in power just 2 years. And people first thought he was like a man of the people, a bit of an Indonesian Obama. He didn't come up from a military background. And so people were quite, and even West Papuans were happy about him being elected. He had visited West Papua during his election campaign, and he said he would take a special interest in West Papua. The most important thing is education, health, and infrastructure. So he was taking a bit of a development approach to West Papua, to fixing the Jakarta so-called Papuan problem. But not everybody believed that the development approach would work. The Reverend Socrates Yoman, he's head of the Baptist Church in West Papua. He said the most important, sorry, I just have to read my notes, my superpower memory sometimes fails. The core problem in West Papua is political. There's no point in talking about economic fixes if we do not have a genuine and peaceful dialogue with the West Papuan people. And some of the statements made from the ministers in his government did not encourage West Papuans either. The new Defence Minister, Raya Kudu, he was Chief of Staff at the time Teis Eloe was killed by Kompassa soldiers in 2001. Chief Teis Eloe was chairperson of the Papuan Presidium Council, and he was a bit like the equivalent of a prime minister. He was killed by Kompassa soldiers in November 2001, and the present defence minister said at that time, what did they do wrong? They just killed a rebel leader, they're heroes. So this is not the sort of statement that would encourage West Papuans to believe that the new government is going to be helpful to West Papua. The Minister for Transmigration, responsible for transmigration, said we will encourage more Indonesians to travel to West Papua. And the Minister for Homeland Affairs said we will divide Papua into even more provinces. So these statements were not encouraging to the West Papuan people at all. But Jokowi did take on some of the concerns of West Papuans. West Papuans have been calling on Jakarta for years to free all West Papuan political prisoners, open up the territory to journalists, researchers, and to have a genuine dialogue with West Papuan leaders. Now, in 2015, in May, Jokowi, I'll call him Jokowi, he's Jokowi, as he's properly known, the Indonesian president. In May 2015, he did go to West Papua, and he said, journalists are now free to go to West Papua, and he released 5 political prisoners. Now this was seemed really encouraging, and it got a lot of media attention overseas. West Papua was now open. But first thoughts, of course, were, was this a stunt? Because it should be remembered at the time, Jokowi was covering a lot of flack internationally for a stance on the death penalty for drug offences. If journalists actually went there, would they be followed around? Would they be monitored by intelligence agents? And I don't know if anybody ever saw the programme on Dateline by Mark Davis a couple of years ago. It was called West Papua's New Dawn. And he visited West Papua, and there were images of him being literally followed around by security personnel. And West Papua has been a closed province since Indonesia took over in 1963 for much of this time. So, although it looked very encouraging, there was a lot of doubt about his policies. Once when Jokowi makes statements which seem positive for West Papua, they're usually contradicted by his officials back in Jakarta. The Indonesian Parliament's deputy chairman said about opening up the province, "I think it's better to reconsider, because the issue of West Papua is currently very sensitive and could be easily politicised." The country's chief security minister said, "We'll allow it, journalists in, on condition that they report on what they see, not go around looking for facts that aren't true from armed groups." And even the executive director of the Indonesian news agency, Antara, said, "Journalists should be penalised. Any journalists who broadcast biased and imbalanced news about West Papua." And in relation to the Papuan prisoners that were released, they were given their pardon. Most West Papuan political prisoners refused a pardon. They want an amnesty. If you accept the pardon, you have admitted you have done something wrong. And it came out later that the 5 prisoners that were released were very reluctant to do so, and were put on a bit of pressure to sign letters asking for a pardon. The most famous political prisoner in West Papua was Philip Karma. He received 15 years jail for simply raising the West Papuan flag. He was released after 10 years. He refused a pardon, but he got a sentence reduction after 10 years for good behaviour. And in July this year, Jokowi appointed a former general who had been accused of human rights abuses in East Timor as the coordinating minister for political, legal and security affairs. In February 2003, the UN-backed Serious Crime Unit indicted Wiranto for his role in the security force violence surrounding Timor-Leste's 1999 UN-organised referendum. He was also commander of the Indonesian Armed Forces at the time of the BS massacre in July 1998, when over 100 West Papuans were killed. But just touching on transmigration, Jokowi said the transmigration to West Papua would be stopped, immediately contradicted by the minister responsible, who said migration would continue. And this was becoming a bit of a pattern, as I was saying. He would make a positive statement towards West Papua, to be immediately contradicted by officials back in Jakarta. But you can't, and Susan has already talked about the military a bit, but you can't talk about West Papua and not talk about the military. There are 36,000 troops in West Papua, the most militarised area of the archipelago. There is actually 21,000 army and 15,000 police, and these numbers are going to be increased. That's one security person for every 99 people in West Papua. Nationally in Indonesia, it's one for every 300. So you can see by that how militarised it is. But again, it's also in the interest of the military to have a small ongoing conflict in West Papua. It gives them excuse to be there. They say, we have to be here to protect the state from so-called separatists. And then they are free to involve themselves in all sorts of resource extraction activities, mining, deforestation, prostitution. They're involved in all sorts of rackets. Susan has already mentioned Detachment 88, which was formed after the Bali bombing and trained and funded by Australia, the US and the UK. Detachment 88 killed 2 West Papuan leaders, Kelly Kalwak and Marco Tubini. So in West Papua, they're more likely to be used as a counter-insurgency force, not chasing terrorists. West Papua is also Treasure Island. It's got the largest copper and gold mine in the world, Freeport. Last year, in 2014, Freeport returned to Jakarta $1.5 billion. So you can imagine how massive it is. You have the BP Tacuna gas fields in the Bird's Head area. That will probably surpass, a big expansion is planned there, will probably surpass Freeport in handing revenue back to Jakarta. And then you have the MIFEE, the Merauke Integrated Food and Energy Estate. This is in the Merauke region near the PNG border. Massive palm oil plantations there. And just last weekend, a report came out called Burning Paradise. Burning Paradise, palm oil in the land of the tree kangaroo. It documents a Korean-Indonesian company, Korindo, Korea, Indonesia, and it has destroyed 50,000 hectares of native forest in the Merauke region. They burn it off, and it's actually illegal to burn off native forests in Indonesia. But they also build roadblocks so to keep journalists and environmentalists out, and this is why the groups involved in this report, Mighty, a US group which I've never heard of before, and some Korean environmental groups, and they actually use drones to fly over the area to document the destruction that's going on. And also these palm oil plantations are of course causing conflict, more migrants will come in to work in the plantations, but also between Papuan groups as well, because the company does give some compensation, very little, but there's a bit of a misunderstanding sometimes about who actually gets the compensation, because the licenses that are signed by people to the company are actually not from the communities that actually own the land. And also sometimes the company will come backed by the army and force Papuans to actually sign over concession areas. So it's a real mess there. Well, that's the autonomy package. It has been a total failure. West Papuans say they are worse off now than they were before the autonomy package was implemented. And it was never been implemented properly. Massive amount of money have gone in, trillions of rupiah, but it's only created a bit of a Papuan elite. None of it really gets to the average Papuan in the street. The military gets a lot of this in corruption, and there's no real clear direction from Jakarta to say where the money should actually go. So it's never been implemented, and again, it's just caused corruption. I mean, building schools and health centres have been built. A lot of it's shoddy work, but they don't have the staff. They haven't created jobs to train staff to actually man the schools, teachers, and healthcare workers. But I'll just go on to the resistance in West Papua. If once upon a time the image was of a OPM, that's a Free West Papua soldier in the jungle with a bow and arrow, now it's of massive demonstrations of people marching in the streets calling for justice. And they are usually organised by the KNPB, which is the West Papua National Committee, and Indonesia seems to consider that they are rather a militant organisation. In fact, they are committed to total peaceful ways forward, as are all aspects of society, including the OPM, the Free Papua movement. But the KNPP is really successful in mobilising large thousands of people to get out and protest against their injustices throughout all of West Papua. The Papuan police chief said they should be banned. But this success is actually bringing in a little bit of a backlash in that just recently there was a counter demonstration by mainly non-Papuans with carrying Indonesian flags and saying that all independence supporters should be banned, and any organisation that supported independence for West Papua. And a church person said that there is a new wave of militia being created in West Papua to counter the success of the KNPP. So shades of East Timor. The good news is that support for West Papua is growing massively in the Pacific region in particular, and church groups, civil society, all through the Pacific have taken on the issue of West Papua massively. In the last few years, it's just snowballed. the civil society Facebook pages. It's just, I can't keep up with what's happening, and it's a lot of it has all been based around the application by West Papuans to become a member of the MSG, which is the Melanesian Spearhead Group. It's the Melanesian Spearhead Group is one of the regional organisations. It's made up of Fiji, PNG, the Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, and the FLNKS, the Indigenous Kanaks of Kanaki or New Caledonia. And it's been a big push for West Papua being a Melanesian. They said, we are part of Melanesia and the Pacific, we want to be a member of the MSG. In 2013, a number of applications went in from various West Papuan groups, and they were all rejected. The MSG said, form a one united umbrella group and send in an application. And the West Papuans did at a historical meeting in Port Phillip in Vanuatu in December 2014. They formed the United Liberation Movement for West Papua, a great achievement. Last year they did resubmit an application from the ULM, WP, and although it was disappointing that they did not get full membership, they actually got observer status, and this in itself is a great victory. It's the first time West Papuans have been recognised diplomatically in a regional organisation, a great victory. I should mention that Indonesia has actually got associate membership, but this year they have put in another application for full membership. The MSG is meeting in Vanuatu in October, and hopefully this time they will achieve full membership. But I mean, you just cannot, the amount of support in the Pacific region is terrific. The other regional organisation is the Pacific Island Forum. Last year, for the first time in 6 years, West Papua was put back on the agenda. It was mentioned in the official communique from the forum, and the forum asked Jakarta to allow a PIF fact-finding mission to go to West Papua. So far, Jakarta has not replied. They are not encouraging people to go and look at what's going on in West Papua, for all the talk about openness. The Pacific Island Forum is actually meeting right now, today, in the Federated States of Micronesia, and West Papua is back on the agenda again. The PIF Secretariat allows civil society organisations to put in submissions on issues of concern in the Pacific region. The highest number of submissions was about climate change. The second highest number was about West Papua. So it just goes to show you how much support they have in the Pacific region. And a new organisation called the Pacific Coalition for West Papua. It's made of, quite recently, it's made of governments and NGO organisations. The new coalition is made up of Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, Tuvalu, Nauru, with Tonga and the Marshall Islands indicating support. And their governments, the FLNKS from Kanaki, the United Liberation Movement for West Papua, and Piango, the Pacific Islands and NGO, Pacific Island Association of Non-Government Organisations. So this is another achievement. I mean, West Papua, it's just more and more it's becoming an internationalised issue. And this is the one fear Jakarta has. I was talking to one Indonesian activist, NGO worker, and I said, because Jakarta, to stop all this increase in awareness in the Melanesian countries, Jakarta actually sent a delegation to the Melanesian countries offering aid and all sorts of, help in Cyclone Pam and things like that. But it's all to do with stopping West Papua getting the membership at the MSG. And he said the reason, and it seems that actually the Foreign Affairs Department in Jakarta spent most of their budget countering the West Papuans, this surge of support they're getting. And, so he said actually Jakarta is fearful they could actually lose West Papua. So for all the bit of sometimes gloomy stories about they're becoming a minority in their own land, high HIV/AIDS rates, lack of education, I mean, this is I mean, I personally believe that West Papua will achieve its independence. It's got to happen within the next 10 years, or they will become such a minority there won't be any hope. But literally, they are really achieving great things. And I might just leave it there at the moment. So.